What's up YouTube, Saf here on Super Saf TV, and in this video I'm going to be comparing the specs of the Motorola Moto X to the Samsung Galaxy S4. Now the Moto X has probably been one of the most rumoured and anticipated phones recently, and it comes into an already competitive market of Android smartphones, which includes the Samsung Galaxy S4 that's been very popular as well. So how different are these two phones, and which is a better phone, which one's right for you? Well, do hit that thumbs up button and let's find out in this head-to-head spec comparison. So we'll start off with what you're going to be looking at most, which is the screen. Now the S4 has a 5-inch screen, a full 5-inch screen, which is a very nice display. The Moto X has a 4.7-inch screen, so you've got a slightly smaller screen. Now in terms of the resolution as well, the S4 has that beautiful 1080p display, 1920 by 1080, and that's 441 ppi. A very nice display. I can speak from experience. You can see it in my full review. Very nice display. Comparing that to the Moto X, it's got a 720p display, so a 1280 by 720p display, which is 316 ppi. So this is similar to things like the S3 and the Nexus 4, which released last year. So in terms of the resolution, the S4 definitely has a big advantage here. Now because the Moto X has a smaller screen, it is also slightly smaller in terms of the height and the width. So you're looking at roughly about 7.5mm in terms of height and a 4.5mm in terms of width. It is, however, slightly thicker, roughly about 2.5mm thicker. Now one thing you do have to bear in mind, it's got a curved back, so you know we're talking about the thickest point is roughly about 2.5mm thicker than the S4. They both have the same weight, 130 grams each. And in terms of the build, the S4 has that polycarbonate plastic body with the hyperglaze finish. So you know that's arguable. Lots of people like it, lots of people don't like it. And it's available in the white frost, the black mist, and you can also get it in limited red version as well on AT&T, I believe. Now with the Moto X, this is what makes it quite unique and special. It is a high quality plastic build, but you've got a whole range of different options available. You've got 18 different back colors. You've got 7 accent colors and also 2 different types of cases available for the Moto X. Now from the stores you're going to have the black and the white versions, so those are going to be pretty basic. But from the Moto Maker site, so now it's going to have about a 4-day turnaround in the US, you can select lots of these different colors and really customize the phone to what you like. You also have the option of Soul Republic tracks or Jack's headphones matching the color of the back of the Moto X. Now this is quite interesting again, because with the S4 you've got a black mist S4 with some white headphones and inconsistencies there, but with the Moto X, you know, you're going to be able to select what you like. So we've talked a lot about the outside of the phones. Now let's move inside. What is powering these devices? You've got the quad-core 1.9 GHz Quake processor for the S4. So that's the general version. That's the version I have here in the UK. You've also got the option of the Exynos 5 octa processor. So now that's got the quad-core 1.6 GHz Cortex A15, and that's got another quad-core 1.2 GHz Cortex A7. So it's got these 8 cores, and in terms of benchmarks and performance, it has been one of the fastest processors out there right now. Now the Moto X here, you've got the dual-core 1.7 GHz Quake processor. Now that's the Moto X8 mobile computing system, and it's based closely on the Qualcomm Snapdragon S4 Pro chipset. So that's what you're going to be expecting here. Now clearly, in terms of what the current standards are of Android smartphones out there, it doesn't match some of those specs, and in terms of benchmarks as well, is coming in lower to the S4. There's no doubt about that. They've got the same GPU, Adreno 320, so that's similar here. But in terms of performance, you're generally going to find that the S4 is going to be better for those more high intensive tasks. In terms of day-to-day usage and general tasks, it should be pretty neck and neck, but that will be interesting to see side by side. Both of these have 2 GB of RAM as well, which is great to see. RAM is great for your multitasking and things, so that's great to see that both of these do have the 2 GB of RAM, which is pretty standard on Android smartphones these days. And in terms of the different options available, you've got the 16, 32 and 64 GB versions on the S4. On the Moto X, you're going to have the 16 and 32 GB versions. Cameras is another thing that's pretty interesting. The S4 has that 13 megapixel camera. It's a really nice camera, and it's got lots of new features such as the dual camera feature, drama shot, sound in shot, and the list goes on. There's quite a few new features on the Samsung Galaxy S4. Now with the Moto X, you've got a 10 megapixel camera, but they're calling it a clear pixel camera. So each pixel is roughly about 27% larger than your general smartphone cameras out there, and Motorola is saying that it's going to capture 75% more light. So for low light, that's going to be quite interesting to see. Now this is similar to what HTC were doing with the ultra pixel camera, but they only had a 4 megapixel camera, whereas the Moto X has a 10 megapixel camera. You've also got some new features here, such as flicking your wrist twice to activate the camera, which is pretty interesting. So you don't have to actually go in and touch anything, you just have to flick your wrist twice and it will activate the camera. You can touch anywhere on the screen to take a picture as well, and if you swipe your finger up and down, that will zoom in and out as well. So some interesting new features that are coming up on here. In terms of the quality and how well it performs in low light, we'll have to see these side by side. Now both of these do also film at 1080p from the rear facing cameras. Front facing cameras, 2 megapixels here on both, as well as 1080p recording from the front facing cameras. So quite similar here. Again, side by side comparisons will tell us differences in quality. Now the operating system, so you've got Android Jelly Bean 4.2.2 on the Samsung Galaxy S4. Now that's with the TouchWiz UI, so that's the skin on top. The Moto X also comes with 4.2.2 Jelly Bean, so not the latest version of Jelly Bean, and it is very close to vanilla Android, but because of some of the additional features, it is slightly customized. So you've got a little bit of changes, so you've not got the stock Android experience on here, you've got some additions. So looking at some of the new features that the Moto X has above the Android system, you've got always on voice commands, so they don't take up too much battery. You can just say okay Google now and it will activate the device, so that's quite interesting to see. You've got pulse notifications on the screen, so they will pulse up and give you a preview of what's there instead of an LED notification light, which they say doesn't tell you anything. Now I personally disagree with this, because on the S4 the LED notification light is pretty useful. You've got different colors for different things. White, for example, for me is the WhatsApp message, or if I've got a tweet, then the green light comes on. So at a distance I can usually tell, if the phone's charging at distance, I can usually tell without actually looking over. So I personally think LED notifications, especially at distance, do tell you something. So I disagree with what they're saying here. The S4 has its own features. You've got things like smart scroll and smart pause. Now it's arguable, some people that don't actually like these. I personally don't use them myself, I'll be completely honest here. You've got air view and air gesture. I do use air view, so you can hover your thumb finger over the screen and it's going to give you a preview for a few things. So that's quite interesting as well. You've also got an IR blaster on the S4, which is really useful for controlling your devices and things. So a few differences here. It really depends on what you think is more useful. It'll be interesting to see. Now looking at the batteries, the S4 has the 2600 milliamp battery and it is removable, so you can carry around a spare. The Moto X is got the 2200 milliamp battery, which is not removable, so you can't remove it. But they're saying in terms of mixed usage, you're going to be getting 24 hours of usage, which will be pretty impressive, but we'll have to see that hands-on. Now because it's got a low resolution screen, so it's not pushing out as many pixels, then that's going to be interesting to see that it might not take up as much battery as the S4. Finally, looking at the price, now the Moto X, a lot of people were expecting it to come in at similar pricing point to the Nexus 4, especially because of the low resolution screen and the dual core processor and things like that, but it is not going to be available offline for now anyway. You can get it for $199 on a 24-month contract in the US. Now this is quite surprising, because a lot of people were expecting it to be lower. Comparing that to the S4, very similar pricing. You're going to be looking at roughly about $199 as well on a 24-month contract in the US. You can also get it offline here in the UK for roughly between £450 to £500. Now the Moto X release dates, they're saying late August, early September, and that's going to be available in US and Canada. No word on the UK whatsoever right now. That is very annoying for me, because I am from the UK. They had that with the Nexus 7 as well, a late UK release date, and it seems to be a bit of a trend, which is very disappointing for the UK viewers and international viewers as well. But those were the key differences between these two devices. The S4 does boast those higher specs, the high resolution screen, as well as the processor, whereas with the Moto X, they're building it more around experiences rather than specs. They're trying to customize it and things like that to really catch the audience. It really depends on what's more important to you. I mean, which one would you go for? Would you go for the Samsung Galaxy S4 or would you go for the Motorola Moto X? Do drop me a comment below and let me know your thoughts. It'll be interesting to see what everyone thinks of these differences. I hope you enjoyed this video and found it useful. If you did, as always, please do hit that thumbs up button for me. It really does help me out. And why not subscribe to the channel? I've got plenty more content coming up on here. Thanks for watching. This is Saf on Super Saf TV. And I'll see you next time.